Katrine was clearly the centre in the basketball and I'm the point guard. I'll have to lower this mic. Thank you. We participate in sport. Thank you very much, and on behalf of the messages from the government and the minister, flexibility is the norm for all, and all of those other great encouraging signs about a modern public sector. Thank you for your address today, Katrine. Now you're going to hear a bit more from me about the Flexible Workplace Futures project. So I want to give you some context about this project. So I'm just going to walk around a little bit while I do this. Okay, I'm not going to go into the reasons for the project because I think I did that in some of my background remarks. But the Flexible Workplace Futures project was something that started in 2013-14, and I talked about the policies and procedures already in place. So why did we need to do this work? The whole range of drivers for doing this work, and they include the economic imperative for a more productive public sector and a high-performing public sector, to increase the workforce participation rates for some groups that are lower, excuse me, in particular women, and other groups like people with a disability, Aboriginal people. We need to be more flexible in the way we approach work to enable other groups to participate in employment. Our ageing population, Katrine has touched on that, and I will in a bit more in just a moment. But also the need to work longer. The federal government policies, you all know, we are going to have to work longer. You won't be able to get the pension until you're 67 or 70. Those policies are going to continue to change because the governments can't afford to fund, the ageing population. So we have to change. This is just to remind you the profile of South Australia's ageing population. Just even, does it work? Yes, just even within the next 10 years, we are seeing people living longer. That means we have to work longer. It also means we're going to have to care longer. So there's a lot of new, the new social profile and community that we all have to work and live in and care in. What was the objective? Well, one of the things I was really keen to do was increase the consistency and transparency in decision making in the implementation of flexible work practices in the South Australian public sector. My job works across both public and the private sector, but I had a lot of experience in the public sector and knew, as the largest employer in South Australia, and I know Irma's vision about being the employer of choice and exemplar in innovation, we needed to create a greater consistency in the public sector for the future. As I said, the policies and procedures exist, but approaches vary, often dependent on that individual supervisor or manager and their particular views. Dependent on the workplace culture rather than what is best practice. And inequality in the application process and variable application processes, and sometimes not even an application process for flexible work, leads to inequitable outcomes. And in my role as Commissioner for Equal Opportunity, I would see different decisions. They can vary from one business unit to another, let alone one department to another. And if you work in one agency in the public sector, shouldn't your employment conditions be pretty similar in other agencies? So I'm getting a few nods here. So we needed to be more consistent. And the government has committed to introducing flexible work targets in chief executives' performance agreements. I'm not sure it's the contracts, but I think in their performance agreements. A whole bunch of agencies were involved in that, and I've listed them there, and I'm not going to go over them in the interest of time. So what were the deliverables? We wanted to do some research and source what's some best practice. We wanted to update the Commissioner's guideline, and we did that in conjunction with Irma's office. Develop some tools. SafeWork SA were doing some work around an electronic request form, so introducing that transparency about how to apply for flexible work. Develop some training for managers and a manager's app. We drew on a lot of work from DCSI, their particular handbook, and a staff survey that they've done in relation to flexible work. The project was there to support agencies to implement these tools, develop their own flexible policies or particularly practices. And we've developed a package which I will come to in just a moment. Before I do that, I want to touch on some research that we did. So through the project, we made a lot of connections, and that was fantastic. And one of them through the former DeMita. They were doing some work, I think, it was a range of agencies were involved that I listed there around the high performance framework. And we asked one of the universities to drill down into that data that they'd already collected to see what they could establish or find out about flexible work or attitudes to flexible work. I've just drawn out some key findings here. The use of flexible work, FWA, besides flex time, which is a wonderful tool, but besides flex time, like compressed weeks, purchase leave, working from home, is very low. Two groups seem to be working disproportionately hard. So they were the low hours part-timers, so people working 0.2 or 0.4. They're working very hard. And full-time supervisors and managers are working very hard. And these two groups are least happy with flexible work. They're obviously wanting the low hours, wanting to work those part-time hours, but not perhaps being asked to do more. And I guess full-time people struggling to actually create flexibility in their life. No surprise, women utilise flexible work more than men. And interestingly, the use of that is not just limited to child rearing, it extends over their working career, which goes back to some earlier information about we are caring longer, people are caring for parents and relatives throughout their lives, and women are doing most of this. Female supervisors, there are more female supervisors and they take up the flexible work. Women's well-being, and this is a bit of a concern, decreases as they move up in rank, whereas men's increases. So if you draw the correlation between women and caring, those women going up in seniority are still caring and therefore their well-being is reducing. And there's other research that confirms that. And so I think this issue about sharing the caring is really important for our future. So what is in the package? So I'm just going to, this is a list of some of the things in there, but I'm going to show you quickly, go to this to whip through it to give you a sense, because the information's there. And it's about implementation really. So this is on our website. It's got a whole range of things, economic reasons, myth bunking, the evolution of flexible work, legislation and standards. This is some stuff around infographics, business case information, busting the myths, evolution, compliance with legislation, standards and agreements, so a whole lot of information there. Increasingly this area is being regulated. So it's not a nice to have. It's being built into enterprise agreements, into legislation, requests for flexible work, etc. Types of flex time, types of flex work, an action table. So if you don't know where to start, there's a sample of an action table where you can look at leadership, policy, procedures, infrastructure, facilities, monitoring and evaluation. We stole this from Demato, so I acknowledge that. But it's there, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. And there's a whole lot of material from Safe Work SA as well as DCSI, who've done some wonderful stuff in a handbook. And we've compiled all of that there. So it's information that is there and is about accessing that and implementing. Now, I need to go back. So please, those of you in the public sector or the private sector, it's up there for your use. And also, as I said, Safe Work SA were keen to develop an electronic request form, and that was designed to increase data collection, transparency in decision making, and people getting reasons as to why or why not their request was approved. So to sum up, what were the outcomes? I think there's 4 key things I'd say to you. Culture is significant. We need a supportive cultural environment. It's not just enough for leadership to say this is an okay thing. It needs to go right down to our managers. The capability of our managers and our supervisors needs to increase if we really want the culture to change. And supportive employers and managers, and this goes to that same point. We need to move from individual viewpoints about this. We need to move from mistrust and presenteeism and the but approach. You know, it's not all right in my team. If you want to work in policy, it's okay over there. If you want to do a project, it's okay over there. We need to move from not in my team, a bit, perhaps somewhere else. And confusion about the role of performance development. This happens all the time. People say to me, but what about the poor performers? You know, if they want to do flex work. Poor performance is an issue you need to deal with irrespective of flexible work. Separate the two. Have your poor performance framework in place. Do not confuse the issues. And there's some information about that in the package. It needs to be systemic, and we need consistent decision making, and I think I've made this point clear. We need better data. It's not good data. We had quite a lot of trouble. I'm looking at Tim here. Getting good data to actually see who's doing this. I think, Irma, you're keen. There's data about part-time work, and that's about it. And I think you're keen to do some further work on that. And we need to overcome uniqueness about roles. Why not? And ask the question, how can we do this? And how am I going for time? Timekeeper? Okay, good. And also, we need the mechanics in place. So tools, technology, and I'm not going to go there because there's others who are going to speak about that today. But they're the 4 key areas I think that we need to embrace in order to drive the implementation because the policy and the procedures are all there. So in summary, implementation and consistency, culture, manager capabilities. I want to finish with a quick video. It's 2.5 minutes and I've just got enough time to do that. This room is predominantly, I guess, public sector, local government people. I work a lot with the private sector as well. I was in Sydney on Tuesday and this video was released and it's called All Roles Flex. And so to give you a sense of what some big, large corporate private sector organisations are saying about flexible work. One click. And
I think in our organisation and many others, flexibility used to be seen as something that was either the domain of the privileged few, as senior managers who might be able to do that, or it was something for people who just wanted to work part-time.
For me, it's been a great experience. So I've changed about 5 months ago and really changed my rhythm. And I found it's been life-changing.
Knowing that you've got that organisational permission actually allows you to be a bit bolder perhaps than we would have been in the past.
We've really moved from a culture where you almost had to justify why you wanted to work flexibly, you had to fill in a form, get permission from your manager, all of those sorts of things, to a culture of incredibly high trust.
I think the culture shift has been huge. It's been embraced by the whole business.
Telstra basically took this up and they said, okay, all roles flex. And I thought, you know what, we're going to do this.
I've been in the bank nearly 33 years, so you might say I'm a little bit old school. So as all these new initiatives and changes come in place, I've just been a bit slow, hesitant to actually jump in. I won't look back ever since I've done it, so it's been really good.
Well, we tried many different things, but the breakthrough for us really came when we adopted Telstra's example, which is to say all roles at the exchange will be flexible from a certain date without exception. The beauty of that is what it does in one statement, it removes all assumptions.
I see no reason why it can't be adopted by any company.
I would ask, if we can't make this job flexible, why not?
Don't be hesitant like me, just jump in, and even if you just test it out. So, have a go.
So thank you. All roles flex, perhaps that's something we can adopt. It really is a cultural and a change in head shift. And I know our group is continuing to meet every now and then because people want to discuss, well, what about rostering? How do we do that in the prisons? How do we do that in the hospitals? We have to run an ICU. How do we do this? So, it's not necessarily easy, but it is, I think, a shift in headset allows the permission to at least have the discussion. So thank you for your time. And now I'm going to introduce Kim.